Today's image demands a little bit of explanation. I think the moral of the story today is how documentary projects can, number one, take over your life, but how they can also, two, return to you in expected and unexpected ways. In 1993, I was working as a newspaper photographer, and I was assigned to shoot pictures at an event at the mosque in Tempe, Arizona, the mosque or the masjid in the Islamic community. At that point in my life, my extent of knowledge in regards to Islam was basically tied to my high school history textbook, which had exactly one paragraph that said Muslims, Islam, and it showed a picture of a mujahideen in a keffiyeh with an AK-47 in Afghanistan. And I remember thinking at the time, really? That's it? That's the coverage that we're going to get? Now, this was Texas, and Texas textbooks are known or not known for being historically accurate. That's a whole separate story. But it always stuck with me. So in '93, I get to the mosque in Tempe, and I'm not sure as to what I can do and what I can't. And it's standing room only. There's a speaker that's come in from the Middle East. He's a big deal. Don't know who he is. Don't know what he's talking about. All I'm there for is to try to make a picture. So I go to this event, I end up standing in the back of the room, and in the middle of his talk, this guy looks in the back of the mosque, sees me, gets down off the stage, starts walking up the center aisle, and in my head, I'm starting to get nervous. And I'm thinking, he looks like he's coming up to me. And sure enough, lo and behold, he stops in front of me, in front of this entire crowd of people, takes off the outfit that he's wearing, the outer layers anyway, folds it up, hands it to me, and in front of everyone says, "You are the best Muslim here." Now, long story short, that kind of freaked me out. I was definitely not looking to be the center of attention, but it got me intrigued about the Muslim community in the United States, what it meant to be a Muslim and what it meant to be a Muslim and live in the United States. So I embarked on about a 4-year project from 1995 until for about 4 years. I dove into this project headlong. The problem was, this was prior to 9/11. The Muslim community was not getting a lot of attention in America, and the magazine editors that I spoke to literally knew nothing about the religion, the culture inside the United States. There was no interest whatsoever, not to mention a profound ignorance on the level of the photo editors who when I would call and bring up this project, they would just say some of the strangest things. And what I realized was, and I started digging into the American media's coverage of Islam. And again, remember, this is like 1995, 96. The Muslim community was covered twice a year, typically, on average. Number one, Ramadan. Low-hanging fruit, exotic. Every lazy journalist on the planet has probably done a story on Ramadan. The second was Islamic terrorism. And that was, to me, the weird link, was how that religion, among all the others, was the one that was really getting targeted for the extremist happenings. So anyway, I was intrigued, and this is how documentary projects come to be. I find a story, I find a subject that I typically know very little about, and I start researching and digging in and diving in and starting to photograph. So in the midst of this, I moved to Southern California. And in my research, I found someone at a national Islamic organization who I approached and said, look, I'm not Muslim. I'm a young photographer. All I'm saying is I'm interested and intrigued, and I'd love to do a picture story. This person, after meeting with him several times, said, okay, I will help broker access for you. And he did. And over the next 4 years, he and I spent a fair amount of time together. And he helped me get access in places like New York, New Mexico, California, all over the place. So in the midst of this story, I end up in northern New Mexico. This is before I've moved here, at a very specific location covering a very specific event, which was Islamic educators working with American educators, helping them teach what the Muslim religion was about. Very interesting group of people, amazing location. I show up at this event, and lo and behold, there's a guy, and he approaches me. He's an Islamic scholar, and he says, look, I don't want you to photograph me. Now, this happens a fair amount. People just come up front and they go, look, I know who you are, what you're doing here. I don't want anything to do with you. So he says, please don't photograph me. And I said, fine, no problem. He said, I'm not real thrilled about you being here. I don't think this is a really good thing. Whatever you do, do not make pictures of me. No problem. So the next day I get up at 3 in the morning and I leave Santa Fe and I drive north a couple of hours and I go to the same location. And the idea for me is wait for the sun to come up. The sun is going to come over the top of this mountain range and it's going to hit this building at a very specific angle. It's going to make amazing photograph. And at sunrise, they're going to come in to pray and I'm going to get someone walking in front of this building. I always want a human element in my work. So I show up at 3. No one knows I'm there. So I get on the property, I get set up, I'm standing in pitch black. I've got an M6 on a tripod with a 35 and a little Sunpack flash on top, and I'm waiting. And I'm waiting, and I'm by myself. It's freezing. Sun starts to come up, but right before it comes up, still dark, I hear footsteps. Footsteps come. Whoever's walking walks directly in front of me, in front of the building. The sky now has light in it, but the sun's not yet up. This is exactly what I'm there for. So, bam, I hit the shutter, the flash blasts, and guess who it is walking along the building? It's the guy who told me not to photograph him. And he is upset, as you can imagine. So I'm like, look, I'm sorry, it was dark. I didn't know it was you. I would never done that on purpose. He yells at me. We go our separate ways. A year goes by. I'm back at the same location, working on the same event, and the same guy is there. This time, however, he looks at me when I walk in the room and he cocks his head and he goes, oh, you're still working on the story. And I said, I'm not going anywhere. I said, I haven't really gotten very far, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm a long-term guy. He completely changed. The fact that I'd spent a year working on the project, to him, was the evidence he needed to know that I was not a tourist. I'm not a looky-loo. I'm somebody who's really trying to tell a story. So he says, hey, I'll help you. You know, he's a really well-respected Islamic scholar, and his connections were pretty incredible. So over this time, I actually make pictures for him. I make pictures for his organization. He helps me get access all over the place. After 4 years of working on the project, I begin to realize that I was never going to get the A story. I was only going to get the B story because I'm non-Muslim. And I was also viewed as a journalist, regardless of what I said to people. They saw me with the camera and they said, you're a journalist, you're probably going to make us look bad, you're trying to you some expose. Again, if you looked at how the Islamic community was covered in America, you would know exactly why they were saying that. My Muslim friends said to me, look, we didn't want to discourage you, but this is an uphill battle, it's going to be really hard for you. So 4 years, I canceled the project. I'm like, look, I learned a lot, I had great experiences, I got to travel all over the place, but I'm going to walk away from this. This is the year 2000 now. I go to southern France for the Visa pour l'Image Festival with my wife, and afterwards we decide to go to Morocco. And we're going to drive about 4,000 kilometers through Morocco. And we're in the process of doing this, and as we get to the town of Fez, which has this incredible Medina, which is labyrinth-like, and once you get inside the Medina in Fez, it's almost impossible to find your way out. These little street kids come up and you can pay them and they lead you out of the Medina. So we're leaving the Medina at night. There are thousands of people around. The Medina is one of the most energetic places you are ever going to find. And I'm just like overloaded. And in the midst of this thousands of people swarming all around us, I look up and dressed in white, head to toe, not moving. The only person in the sea of people not moving is the guy who told me not to photograph him, the Islamic scholar. So I walk up to him, and without skipping a beat, before I can say anything, he looks at me and he goes, "I've been thinking about you." And then he says, "How would you like to go somewhere that you would never be able to go on your own?" And I said, "Look, I'm here making pictures. I got my cameras. My wife is with me. We're with another couple. He's a photographer." I said, "Wherever you want to take us, I guarantee they're not going to want two Americans with cameras running around." And he said, "Not a problem. Let's go." We turn around, we go back into the Medina, into this, ended up at a building, which I think, and I may have this wrong, my memory is spotty, one of the oldest Islamic schools in the Middle East, in the world actually. An incredible building, open air, intricate woodwork, carvings, just, you're walking in there thinking, yeah, I would never be able to get in here if it wasn't for him. He not only gets us in, he gets us permission to photograph. And my jaw hits the floor. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And so myself and the other photographer, we are just snapping. But it's a very low-key, very quiet, very subtle event. It's the perfect Leica event because you're getting onesie-twosie pictures, and then you got to put the camera down and wait. So the image that we're going to look at is one of many that I made that night. There are two that I really pulled from this event that I think are the two best images, the most mysterious images to me. But I want to talk a little bit about why I think this image is interesting and why I like it so much. All right, my photo friends and family, let's break down why I like this image. Now, I almost put some of the images in that I made right before this image, but I left them out because I was too lazy to go get them, and this film is droning on. This could be an hour, it could be a miniseries. I don't really know where it's going, but there's a few things about this I really like. Number one is everything I just told you. What it took for me, Dan Milner, non-Muslim from the United States, to end up in this place in North Africa. That to me was kind of miraculous for that to actually happen. So that is one of the things. And that's the reason I'm mentioning that, is that this is the danger of one of the dangers of photography is you fall in love with an image for all kinds of reasons, whether or not that image is good or not, because you have this backstory. You fall in love with it. You were there. You could smell it. You could hear it. That doesn't always translate into a good image. So it's something you have to be careful of. That's why you need a good editor. That's why we have photo editors who can look you in the face and say, look, I know you're in love with this picture. It's just not good. In this case, I think it's a decent picture, which is why I'm showing it to you, but there's plenty of images I've made in the past that I have a personal relationship to that are just simply not good enough to show, even though I'm in love with them. Okay, so here we are in the school, and I am in the back of the room, and I am very quietly moving around from side to side. Now, the one thing I didn't do is get in front of these guys. I didn't feel like that was a doable situation. There have been plenty of cases in the past where I was in a scene similar to this, and I had no problem getting up and moving around in the front, but I did not feel that was the smart thing to do in this case. I did shoot from the side a fair amount, and I didn't like those images quite as much. So I like this for a couple of reasons. One, minor reasons, is I've got these nice little wires up here that are giving sort of a dynamic element aspect to this picture, but that's minor. What I like is I have a foreground of men here, and the heads are spaced nicely. I think that that works really well. I've got a background with this guy right here in the back, and my midground is this guy right here, this ghosted figure. And the ghosted figure to me makes a huge difference in this picture. Without that ghosted figure, I'm not sure I like this picture nearly as much. But this right here, not only because it is a ghostly looking figure, but it adds that middle ground that I need between the guy in the back and these row of guys in the front. So that's a big element. Secondarily, I've got a frontal face on this guy in the back. I can see his face. That's something that your eye gravitates to immediately. That gives an attachment human angle to this picture. Even though the rest of these guys are human, obviously, to be able to see his face is a really important thing in my mind. I don't mind the fact that it's partially cropped. I'm working quickly here, and I think it still works fine that I can't see his entire face. So I've got foreground, midground, and background working. I've got these little angles up here at the top that I mentioned before. I've got the ghostly figure as my midground. But the last thing is the exposure and the light. And this is absolutely critical, is that you see right here on the shoulder, you see here on the shoulder, here on the shoulder, here on the shoulder, and most importantly on this head and face right here. You see those little edges of rim light. The rim light is absolutely essential because it builds separation between the men and the background. If that's jet black, then this shoulder and this man blends into this guy. Don't want that, can't have it. This guy would blend into this guy. Don't want it, can't have it. Same thing. This is the most important piece of rim light in the entire frame, in my mind, because it separates this guy from the darkest, deepest shadow over here, and you actually have detail. I can see his entire head. That's a good exposure. And this is wide open at probably 1/8 of a second, which is 1/4 of a second, half second was about as low as I could go with the Leica, and that was low percentage. Anything from 1/8 up, I was pretty steady, pretty solid with consistently. And that's it. That's why I think this is an interesting image. Again, the backstory adds a sense of heightened interest to me. And maybe now that you know it, maybe it does with you too.